There's a force inside you that's been quietly sabotaging everything you've tried to build. A voice, a reflex, a pull backwards every time you try to move forward. You've probably called it procrastination, maybe even fear. Maybe you thought it was just a lack of discipline, but it's much deeper than that. What you're experiencing is self-sabotage, and it isn't just a mindset, it's a frequency, a living, an energetic pattern that directly interferes with the very frequency of the reality you're trying to create. You can meditate, visualize, script, work, hustle, grind, but if self-sabotage is still active in your system, your efforts will always hit a ceiling. You'll always get so far and then snap back into the same cycle. And the worst part, you won't even realize it's happening, because it doesn't show up as something that looks evil or dangerous. It shows up as comfort, as logic, as distraction and doubt. It wraps itself in stories that feel true, but underneath it all, it has one goal, and that's to keep you where you are. This video isn't just about breaking habits, it's about breaking frequencies. It's about quantum shifting. We're going to decode what self-sabotage really is, energetically, psychologically, and spiritually. We'll explore how your old reality becomes an entity of its own, and how it manipulates your thoughts, emotions, and actions to maintain its existence. Because once you understand the mechanics of this sabotage, where it comes from, how it operates, and why it's tied to your self-worth, you'll finally be able to outmaneuver it. Because manifestation isn't about thinking positive, it's about frequency integrity. And as long as sabotage lives inside your field, you are manifesting backwards. Part 1. To understand self-sabotage, you first have to understand frequency. Because everything, your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, your reality, are operating on one. Your current reality isn't just a situation you're stuck in. It's a frequency you've been broadcasting, sometimes for years. And that frequency has become stable and familiar and comfortable, even when it's painful. When you start aligning with your desired reality, when you start raising your frequency, your current one doesn't just fade away, it fights back. It has momentum, it has weight, and more than anything, it wants to survive. And this is where the self-sabotage begins. So your old frequency isn't just a vibe, it's an entity, a kind of spiritual echo created from your repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. In esoteric terms, it's called an egregor, a subtle energetic intelligence born from your mental and emotional patterns. It doesn't have a physical body, but it does have a mission: to maintain the conditions it was created from. That means keeping you in the same cycles, the same identity, the same life. That way it can remain in existence. Think about it like this. Every thought you've had, every emotional reaction you've repeated, every time you've said, "I can't," or "it's too hard," or "why me," all of that builds energy. And when that energy is consistent, it then becomes form. Just like a drop of water becomes a puddle, then a stream, then a river, your internal patterns become an energetic current that shapes the world around you. And this current doesn't like change, the same way a current in a river doesn't like to be redirected. The moment you begin to shift, to meditate more, to heal, to visualize something greater for yourself, to act like the version of yourself that you want to be, this frequency panics. It senses its own destruction. It feels itself dissolving. And so it pushes back the only way it knows how. And that's by triggering the old you through fear, doubt, distraction, procrastination, anxiety, etc. Whatever keeps you from moving forward. And the twist is that it doesn't feel like sabotage in the present moment. It feels logical. It feels familiar. It feels like you. That's why it's so difficult to spot. It's like a spiritual doppelganger, an echo of your past self trying to pull you back into alignment with the life you said you wanted to leave behind. So the question becomes, how do you be something that feels like you? How do you outmaneuver a version of yourself that's lived in your system for years, sometimes even decades? The answer begins with awareness. You have to see it. You have to stop identifying with every thought and emotion that enters your mind, because not all of it is yours. Some of it belongs to the version of you that you're leaving behind, and that version will whisper whatever it needs to keep you small. You are not that version anymore, and the moment you stop reacting to its voice, the frequency starts to break. Not instantly, but over time. Repetition builds it, and repetition can dissolve it. So don't panic when old patterns resurface. It's not failure, it's friction. And friction is a sign that your frequency is changing. The old energy is collapsing, the egregor is dissolving, because the only way out is through. Part 2. Now that you understand your old frequency isn't just a bad habit, but a living energetic pattern, we need to talk about how it operates, because this thing doesn't just sabotage you randomly. It plays chess while you're playing checkers. It studies you and knows exactly where to strike. And the first place that it hits is fear. The moment you start aligning with the new reality, whether it's peace, abundance, purpose, or love, your old frequency starts to panic. Why? Because it feels itself dissolving. It senses its own death. And fear, to that energy, is a survival tactic. So it projects that fear onto you. Suddenly, moving forward feels uncomfortable. Doing what's right feels risky. Taking the next step feels unsafe. You're not lazy, you're not weak, you just internalized fear that was never truly yours. It belonged to the frequency that you're outgrowing. This is how the self-sabotage begins. Fear becomes disguised as logic. It will sound like, this isn't the right time, or I'm not ready, or what if it doesn't work? And if you're not aware, you'll obey that fear as if it were wisdom, not realizing it's your old self fighting for survival. But fear is just one part of the game. The second is identity. Your current identity, even if it's rooted in struggle, anxiety, or limitation, is still familiar. And humans cling to what's familiar even when it hurts. Because evolution taught us that safety is in the known. Change to the primitive brain equals danger. So when you start shifting, when you stop reacting the way you used to, when you no longer chase validation, when you raise your standards, your nervous system interprets that as a threat. Not because it is, but because it's unfamiliar. This is where you'll see self-sabotage show up in ways that feel like coincidence. The friend calls that you promised yourself you'd stop talking to. The bad habit suddenly looks attractive again. That one mistake you swore you'd never make again returns. Not because you're cursed, not because you're weak, but because the old frequency is trying to pull you back into resonance with what feels safe, even if it's destructive. And the hardest part is sometimes sabotage comes disguised as relief, a temporary escape, numbing out and decompressing, convincing yourself that maybe your dreams were unrealistic anyway, that maybe it's easier to just stay where you are, that maybe healing, growth, and alignment are just too much. But that's not your intuition speaking. That's your past trying to protect itself, because your old frequency doesn't want your healing. It wants your obedience. So how do you stop this cycle? First, you have to become radically honest. Ask yourself, what do I fear I'll lose if I actually change? That question will expose the true roots of your self-sabotaging tendencies. Sometimes the answer is I'll lose people, or I'll lose comfort. And sometimes it's just I'll lose who I've always been. And that's the cost of becoming who you're meant to be, the death of who you were. And that death feels like loss until you realize it's truly liberation. Imagine if a snake cried every time it shedded its own skin. The truth is, you cannot bring your old identity into a new reality. The energy won't match. The frequency won't hold. So your job is not just to build new habits, it's to disidentify with the version of yourself that built the life you're trying to live. Self-sabotage only exists to preserve the self that's no longer serving you. And the moment you truly let that version die, you stop fighting the old, you stop doubting the new, you start vibrating as if the shift has already happened, because energetically it has. Part 3. The real reason you self-sabotage. Self-sabotage isn't just bad habits. It's not just procrastination or overthinking or choosing the wrong person or quitting on your goals when they start to demand discipline. That is a symptom. The root of self-sabotage is a much deeper force. And until you understand the energy behind it, you'll stay trapped in a loop where every step forward is met with a pushback that you can't explain. This isn't just psychological, this is metaphysical. This is spiritual warfare against yourself, and you're playing both sides of the battlefield without even realizing it. Understand that every version of your reality is structured by a specific frequency. That frequency isn't just an idea or a mindset, it's a complex living architecture built from your dominant thoughts, emotional states, habitual actions, and deeply rooted beliefs. Every repetition of a thought, especially those loaded with emotional charge, acts like a brick. Over time, you build a spiritual structure, a vibrational framework that becomes your current reality. But here's where it gets deep. That framework doesn't just go away when you decide you want something better. It fights back. You think you're just trying to change your life, but in truth, you're waging war against your former self. And the most dangerous thing about your old self is that it does not want to die. It's not malicious, it's just programmed for survival. It wants to keep existing. It has an energetic identity of its own, and it's not just your past. See, this egregor, they exist on the non-physical plane, but they influence the physical. That version of you who believes nothing ever works out and people always leave, that is an entity. That belief has gained form, weight, and momentum, and it lives on through you. And the moment you try to transcend it, it panics. This is why when you start leveling up, things seem to start falling apart. It's not the universe testing you, it's your old frequency fighting for its life. It fears annihilation. So what does it do? It triggers your mind into self-sabotaging. Not because you're weak, but because your old self knows your mind better than you do. See, you call it self-sabotaging, but to the entity, it is existing. It's been living there longer. It speaks in your voice. It creates logical sounding fears. And the moment you buy into those thoughts, it wins. Because fear, once internalized, becomes a signal, and the universe, operating through the law of magnification, always responds to your dominant signal. And that's the paradox. You sabotage not because you're not ready, but because the old frequency has convinced you that moving forward is dangerous. It's created a subconscious association between progress and fear. And because the brain avoids fear at all costs, it avoids progress. Not consciously, but through subtle avoidance, irrational decisions, emotional outbursts, or just low-level discomfort that convinces you to try again later. The truth is, your mind has been tricked into believing that change equals death, because your current energetic identity sees itself dying as you rise, and it is. But that's exactly what needs to happen. Your ego, which is just your self-concept hardened into identity, will not die quietly. It needs to be transcended through conscious awareness. That's why the first step to defeating self-sabotage is not hustle. It's not more books or tactics. It's awareness. You have to separate your true self from your old frequency. You have to observe your thoughts without identifying with them. When fear arises, instead of saying, I'm scared, and identifying with the emotion of fear, you say, that's my old frequency reacting. Once you do that, the fear is no longer yours. It's a signal being transmitted from a dying identity. You don't fight it, you witness it, and then you walk forward anyway. That right there is called courage, and courage is the vibrational opposite of fear. It doesn't mean that you don't feel fear. It just means that you stopped obeying it. You stopped letting fear control your actions. The moment you act in alignment with courage, you generate a new frequency, one that overrides the old signal and begins to restructure your energetic blueprint. This is not theory, this is spiritual mechanics. The moment you choose courage in the face of fear, your field changes. You begin broadcasting a new code, one that isn't corrupted by self-doubt. One that actually invites your desired reality to mirror back to you. But the key is consistency. A single act of courage won't override years of self-betrayal. You have to build a new identity through new decisions. You don't affirm your way out of self-sabotage, you prove your way out. Through aligned action. Through doing the hard thing even when it's uncomfortable. Through reminding yourself again and again that your fear is not an omen, it's just a ghost from the past trying to survive in the future. Part 4. Self-worth is the ceiling of your reality. This being the final chapter, but the most important. Because this is the one that silently governs your entire life. Not your goals, not your desires, not your vision boards, or how many affirmations you can repeat through gritted teeth. None of that overrides the quiet, unspoken baseline of what you truly believe you deserve. And that belief, that frequency, is the ceiling of your entire reality. You will never manifest above your level of self-worth because your life can only expand to the level that your subconscious identity will allow. Every outcome, every opportunity, every relationship, every dollar, every ounce of peace or chaos in your life, it all calibrates to the frequency of your self-worth. And that frequency isn't determined by what you say you want. It's determined by how you see yourself when no one is looking. That's the trap. Most people confuse what they want with what they believe they deserve. But there's a chasm between the two. You can want wealth and still sabotage abundance. You can want love and still repel intimacy. You can want freedom and still subconsciously build cages. All because a deeper part of you doesn't feel worthy of what you're calling in. Let's break this down. So your self-worth is built on your self-esteem. Self-esteem is built on your self-trust. And self-trust is built on the micro decisions you make daily. Whether or not you follow through on what you know you should do, and whether or not you avoid what you know you shouldn't, every time you betray yourself, every time you skip the gym or lie to yourself or entertain what drains you, you chip away at your internal trust. And when your trust in yourself goes down, so does your self-esteem. And when your self-esteem goes down, as does your confidence. And confidence is not just a feeling, it's the frequency that tells the universe, I am ready to receive. When confidence is low, your self-worth drops. And when your self-worth drops, the universe constricts your life to match it. You start running into invisible walls. The job offer ghosts you. The healthy partner slips away. Your money plateaus or vanishes. And you don't understand why. Because on the surface, you're doing everything right. But that's the catch. Manifestation doesn't respond to surface level action. It responds to energetic coherence. If your actions and your self-concept are in conflict, the universe defaults to the deeper signal. And the deeper signal always comes from how you see yourself. That's why people say the affirmations every day and never see change. It's why some of the most disciplined people in the world still hit glass ceilings. You can't think your way into transformation. You have to become the person who believes they deserve the life that you're trying to create. And becoming that person doesn't start with vision boards. It starts with discipline. Real self-worth is built through consistency, through keeping promises to yourself, through doing the things you said you'd do after the emotion you made the decision in has left. That's how you become trustworthy. And that self-trust is what builds the momentum necessary to raise your ceiling and shift your frequency. And the part that most people miss is that you can't fake this. You can't bypass the work with spiritual language or new age buzzwords. You can't slap a high vibe label over a nervous system that's still traumatized and call it alignment. The universe isn't fooled by aesthetics, it's tuned to truth. And your current reality is a reflection of what your field believes is appropriate for you. Not ideal, not desired, but appropriate. Based on the energetic signals that you've been broadcasting since you opened your eyes this AM. So if you want a higher life, you don't need more hustle, you need to raise the thermostat. You need to stop acting like your dream life is some prize at the top of a mountain and start understanding that it already exists. It's just sitting at a frequency you're not stabilized at yet. And you won't reach it by asking, hoping, or even chasing. You reach it by matching it. Not mentally, but energetically. You match it by becoming a version of yourself who behaves, thinks, and makes decisions as if you already live there. Because that version of you already knows the truth. Manifestation is not about attracting something new. It's about removing the version of you who couldn't hold it. You're not here to earn your worth. You're here to remember it. And remembering doesn't happen by accident. It happens through silence, through presence, through stillness. As Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and then know. Know that you are not broken. Know that you don't have to hustle for love. Know that your value is not contingent on how much pain you've endured or how much you've produced. Know that you are the expression of Source, and Source doesn't make mistakes. But also know this: remembering your worth means living in alignment with it. You don't just believe you're worthy, you behave like it. You say no when you mean no. You walk away from environments that require you to shrink. You commit to your goals like they matter because you matter. And when your actions match your identity, the universe has no choice but to mirror it. And that's when the self-sabotage ends. That's when the delay stops. That's when you stop playing small in the reality that's waiting for you to catch up to your own power. Because it was never about whether or not you were capable. It was about whether or not you believed you were allowed. And now, because you said so, and because you know that you are. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you finally remembered you've always been. In conclusion, the truth is now in front of you. Self-sabotage isn't some mysterious flaw or personal curse. It's a predictable pattern, a frequency, an echo of who you used to be. And it only survives because you haven't stopped feeding it. But the moment you decide to see it, to name it, to stop calling it normal, everything begins to change. You're not stuck because life is unfair. You're stuck because part of you still thinks survival is safer than transformation. That old identity, that worn out story, that quiet, suffocating self-doubt, it's not keeping you safe, it's keeping you small. And you're not here to live a small life, you're here to remember your power. To take accountability for your frequency and to rise into the version of you that no longer needs to force what's already aligned. So if you're tired of repeating cycles, tired of building momentum only to crash at the edge of a breakthrough, tired of watching your potential leak through the cracks of unconscious sabotage, then this is the moment to decide. Not just to want your desired reality, but to become the version of you who can hold it. That's the real work, and that's where the freedom lives. If this video lit something up in you, don't just watch it and move on. Reflect, rewatch, take notes, and apply. Drop a comment below with which part resonated the most. The self-worth ceiling, the ego projection, the energetic feedback loop. Speak it so your awareness of the fact deepens. And if you're serious about mastering your frequency, I beg of you to subscribe. Turn on notifications because this channel isn't about hype, it's about alignment. And I'm going to keep showing up for everyone that is here to holistically elevate. But only if you're ready to show up for yourself. Until then, keep your frequency clean, your mind clear, and your standards high.